Deleted session, April 1st, 1970, Wednesday. Rob noted, this is the regular Wednesday session for April 1st, 1970. It is deleted from the record since it deals with the excellent results Jane achieved using the pendulum today. Seth said, "Good evening. Now, this is not for our book, and give us a moment." Rupert's insights this afternoon were largely correct. Tell him that he does not need the symptoms as a set of checks and balances. This is extremely important. Behind the attitude is still the feeling that he needs to whip himself on in certain areas, and check himself in others. Let spontaneously left alone, without such checks and balances, he will go to the extremes. The symptoms have been kept therefore in case they are needed, a method of discipline that he no longer needs. Now give us time. He is feeling more secure, and this feeling will grow as it sinks into his mind that he will not have to worry about his money productions for the next year, for example. He has also undergone in the past few months another level of development where he trusts his psychic abilities more than he ever did. The symptoms are now like guards that he sets about his behavior. The spontaneous self is being given more and more freedom, yet under a cautious eye, and with the symptoms in the background, again just in case. It is a habit of cautiousness. That is translated, of course, into muscular cautiousness. Remind him, for the 100th time, that he can trust his inner self implicitly, and does not need to set up guards against its spontaneity. For spontaneity is his life, and the source of his creativity, and underline that sentence. Now, he realizes this much more than he did, but the mental and muscular habit of cautiousness carries over. Now, this can be handled in several ways. The mental feelings have caused mental images that in turn hamper physical motion. The body is therefore affected physically, since certain portions of it are not normally used or exercised, and the other portions are kept in a state of strain. Some of these mental habits can be cured rather easily, comparatively speaking. When he felt joyful yesterday, the sense of release was translated, as it should be, into physical expression. He sang, for example. This automatically released, exercised, and relaxed areas of the chest, shoulders, and back. He felt like running, and made a halfway respectable attempt to do so. Feelings of spontaneity, therefore, automatically release the body mechanisms when they are allowed expression. When this occurs, and he sees himself, for example, running, to some extent, this makes the mental image of a non-running self less vivid. The body and mind are so connected that the mind remembers. Say, muscular spontaneity as the muscles remember mental spontaneity, and the will, now, can be used to initiate a series of actions that will be spontaneous, and the motions now, the physical motions, in turn, set up mental images of spontaneity that become self-generating. Do you follow me? Rob said, "Yes." Seth said, "I suggest therefore at this point Let you encourage Robert in spontaneous physical activity as devoted, say, from a disciplined exercise. Often, out of habit now, though not always, the muscles are restricted. Let him try as he once suggested, running in the apartment or outside. The motion is associated with joy and spontaneity. Do you see? Rob said, yes. Seth said, give us a moment. When he feels mentally happy, and he does often, have him in his imagination translate the feeling into spontaneous physical motion. We are trying to initiate some small exercises that will encourage freedom, both mentally and physically. The hands are quite improved over what they were even 2 weeks ago. Let this not escape his notice. The last few days, he forgot to put his corn pad on, with no resulting difficulty. Another improvement he should notice. His period is on time again. Rob noted, on the evening of April 2nd, while brushing her teeth, Jane got this flash from Seth. You need to relearn the joy of physical achievement. Seth said, I mention these because again they would go by the wayside, lost in the concentration upon the physical problem. Rob noted quietly. Seth said, a fear of retaining the symptoms could result in maintaining them longer. This is very important. Anything that is done to minimize that fear is highly important, beneficial, and significant. One reason, you see, that I suggest the running is that any running at all prevents him from projecting into the future a non-running self. Once he runs, he can improve on the running, but he can no longer consider himself someone incapable of running. This is extremely important from both a mental and physical standpoint. Now, the same applies to getting down the floor and up from it. He thinks of himself as someone who cannot. Doing so will prove him wrong and break up still another annoying mental image. At the same time, I do not mean simultaneously, in spare moments, playfully and not seriously, he should see himself performing any number of activities on the floor, from painting as he used to talking or reading. These are simply practical but important sideline exercises that will help break down specific detrimental images that he has. Many from the past have been completely destroyed. And that, the motion itself, already means that the mental image of new motion is replacing the old one. The physical motion is obviously the materialization of inner willness, but you must also set up the opportunity for this to happen. Do you follow me here? Rob said, yes. Hence the suggestions I have given. The session itself, will these suggestions automatically will set Robert's imagination going along these lines. You see, and the idea of freedom is generated both mentally and physically. Now, he has been improving. But now we will work at this from both angles. Earlier, we could not have done so. A sense of play must accompany this, however. We do not want, for example, a desperate attempt to run, which is self-defeating. The same applies to what I said about getting up and down from the floor, and this should not be overdone. We simply want to remind him again of translating the idea of motion into physical motion. These are merely techniques to help along particular lines. Now, basically, spontaneously, he is sympathetic and understanding. The feeling of contempt he had for the sick or crippled has long vanished. Tell him, indeed, that annoyance with his own symptoms could now prevent him from helping others as well as he might, because the energy devoted to maintaining the symptoms is not being used for such constructive purposes. He can help other people better now by being completely healthy, and with his full energy at his command. All of that should be underlined. The specific exercises I gave are to break up lingering habit patterns, both mental and physical, and to encourage spontaneity. Give us a moment. Underline the following sentence. It is safe for him to let go completely now. There is more here that I am trying to get at. It is not a matter of rubber blocking necessarily. I do want him to initiate some fast, quick physical motion, you see, so that the muscular memory is imprinted in this direction. I am still trying to get something more for you. He has been tensed for so long that he has been afraid to let go all at once, in his turns. Much of this had to do with his career. The contract from the dream book will work a great beneficial change. Rob noted, it is in the mail but hasn't arrived, due to the postal strike. Seth said, with his literal mind, he wants to see it in black and white. I suggest he'll break, while I see if I can get at this other material. Now, in all of his endeavors, Rupert should adopt a more playful attitude, even to imagine throwing the symptoms out the window. He is at a point where they are ready to break up entirely. I want to see that he takes advantage of this. The mental patterns are beginning to break up, and I want to be sure that this is translated into physical behavior completely. The spring and the recent good news are having an effect, and the knowledge he gained this afternoon has given him a conscious understanding that he did not have before, and this will automatically minimize the symptoms in a way that is not at once apparent. The point was completely unconscious earlier. Give us a moment. Tell him that the inner self has its own system of checks and balances. He does not need to reinforce it with physical symptoms now. He does not need to fear he will be carried away through spontaneity. Age and experience provide checks and balances of their own that he did not have earlier. There are some final connections that have not been made this evening. You will see why when I give them to you. I have given you, however, information that will be highly valuable. Rupert may also suggest that more insights come to him, for you are close to a final and important breakthrough. I am not going to dictate on the book, since it is too late for what I had in mind for the next installment. Do you have questions? One point. I am glad of your good news, but it was not what I had in mind. Rob said, that was the only question I had. Seth said, my heartiest wishes to you both, and a fond good evening. Rob said, good evening, Seth, and thank you very much. Rob noted. Seth returned briefly. Seth said, one additional note. Have him plunge now into his new book, and stop concentrating on the problem of the symptoms. With his energy in the book, he will have less time and energy to think of them.